What if I told you that the worst nuclear disaster in history was caused by a simple test gone wrong? That's what happened on April 26, 1986, at the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant in Ukraine, then part of the Soviet Union. A massive explosion and fire at Reactor 4 released a cloud of radioactive material that spread across Europe and beyond, affecting millions of people and the environment for decades. In this video, we'll unravel the causes, effects, and aftermath of the Chernobyl disaster, and learn how it changed the world forever. The Chernobyl disaster was the result of a combination of design flaws and human errors. The Reactor 4 was a type of Soviet-designed reactor called RBMK, which had a positive void coefficient. This meant that as the water in the core turned into steam, the power output increased, creating a positive feedback loop that could lead to a runaway reaction. To prevent this, the reactor had control rods that could be inserted to absorb neutrons and slow down the reaction. However, the control rods had graphite tips that initially increased the power output before lowering it. This design flaw made the reactor unstable at low power levels. On the night of the accident, a team of operators was conducting a safety test to see how long the turbine could run on its own after a loss of power. To do this, they had to lower the power output of the reactor to 25%, but due to a series of mistakes and miscommunications, they ended up lowering it to less than 1%. This created unstable conditions in the core, with pockets of steam and water forming. The operators tried to raise the power output by withdrawing most of the control rods, leaving only 6 out of 211 in place. This violated the safety protocols and left no margin for error. At 1:23 a.m., they initiated the test and shut off the main pumps that supplied water to the core. The turbine ran for a few seconds before slowing down, causing a drop in water flow and pressure. This increased the formation of steam in the core, which in turn increased the power output. The operators realized that something was wrong and pressed the emergency shutdown button, which triggered the insertion of all control rods. However, due to their graphite tips, the control rods initially boosted the power output even more, creating a power surge that reached 33,000 megawatts, more than 10 times the normal level. The power surge caused a series of explosions and ruptures in the core, exposing it to the air. The graphite moderator caught fire and burned for days, releasing radioactive material into the atmosphere. The operators had no idea what had happened and initially thought that it was a minor incident. They did not evacuate or alert anyone until hours later, when radiation alarms went off at nearby facilities and towns. The effects of the Chernobyl disaster were devastating and far-reaching. The explosion and fire killed 2 workers instantly and injured dozens more. The firefighters who responded to the scene received lethal doses of radiation and suffered from acute radiation syndrome, ARS, which caused nausea, vomiting, skin burns, hair loss, organ failure, and death. Of the 134 people who were diagnosed with ARS, 28 died within months and 19 more died later from various causes. More than 100,000 people were evacuated from the nearby town of Pripyat and other areas within a 30-kilometer radius of the plant. They left behind their homes, belongings, and pets, never to return. The radioactive material that escaped from Chernobyl spread across Europe and beyond, contaminating land, water, and food. According to some estimates, about 5% of the reactor's core was released into the atmosphere, equivalent to about 400 times more than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The most dangerous isotopes were iodine-131, cesium-137, and strontium-90, which have half-lives of 8 days, 30 years, and 29 years, respectively. These isotopes can enter the human body through inhalation, ingestion, or skin contact, and cause various health problems, such as thyroid cancer, leukemia, and bone cancer. The health effects of Chernobyl are still being studied and debated today. According to the United Nations report, up to 4,000 people could die from radiation-related diseases as a result of Chernobyl. However, some experts argue that this estimate is too low and that tens or hundreds of thousands of people have already died or will die from Chernobyl. The exact number is hard to determine because of factors such as lack of data, conflicting studies, and other causes of death. Moreover, the psychological and social effects of Chernobyl are also significant and often overlooked. Many people who were exposed to radiation are evacuated from their homes suffered from stress, anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. They also faced discrimination, stigma, and isolation from the rest of society. The environmental effects of Chernobyl were also severe and long-lasting. The area around the plant became known as the exclusion zone, where human access is restricted and monitored. The exclusion zone covers about 2,600 square kilometers of land in Ukraine and Belarus. Within this zone, the vegetation and wildlife were affected by radiation in various ways. Some plants died or mutated, while others adapted and thrived. The most contaminated area was the red forest, where the pine trees turned red and died after absorbing high doses of radiation. The wildlife also suffered from mutations, such as albinism, deformities, and reduced fertility. However, some animals also benefited from the absence of humans and increased their population and diversity. The exclusion zone became a refuge for endangered species, such as wolves, bears, lynx, and Przewalski's horses. The economic effects of Chernobyl were also enormous and long-term. The disaster cost the Soviet Union and its successor states billions of dollars in cleanup, compensation, relocation, and recovery efforts. The reactor 4 was covered by a temporary structure called the sarcophagus, which was built in 6 months by thousands of workers who risked their lives. The sarcophagus was meant to last for 30 years, but it started to deteriorate and leak radiation soon after. In 2016, a new structure called the New Safe Confinement, NSC, was completed and slid over the sarcophagus to seal it off for another 100 years. The NSC cost about 1.5 billion euros and was funded by an international consortium of donors. The other 3 reactors at Chernobyl continued to operate until 2000, when they were finally shut down under pressure from the international community. The disaster also affected the economy and society of Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, and other countries in various ways. It reduced agricultural production, industrial output, trade, and tourism. It increased energy dependence, inflation, and debt. It triggered political and social unrest, protests, and movements that contributed to the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. It also sparked a debate on the safety and future of nuclear power around the world. Some countries decided to phase out or reduce their reliance on nuclear energy, while others continued to develop or expand it. The Chernobyl disaster was a turning point in history that shaped our world in many ways. But it also left us with many questions and uncertainties about its lasting effects. How do we deal with the legacy of Chernobyl? How do we prevent such disasters from happening again? How do we balance the risks and benefits of nuclear power? The disaster also inspired scientific research and humanitarian efforts to understand and mitigate its effects. Many organizations and institutions have been involved in monitoring, studying, and helping the affected people and environment. For example, the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, has been coordinating international cooperation on nuclear safety, security, and health since 1986. The Chernobyl Forum is a joint initiative of 8 UN agencies that provide scientific assessments and policy recommendations on Chernobyl. The Chernobyl Children International is a charity that supports children and families affected by Chernobyl through medical care, education, and community development. The Chernobyl Gallery is a project that documents and preserves the history and culture of Chernobyl through photography, art, and storytelling. The current state of Chernobyl and its surroundings is a mix of tragedy and hope. The reactor 4 remains a radioactive tomb that will require constant monitoring and maintenance for centuries to come. The exclusion zone remains a forbidden land that poses health and environmental risks for anyone who enters it. However, some people have chosen to return or stay in the zone despite the dangers. They are known as self-settlers or samoslis, who live off the land and maintain their traditions. Some visitors have also been allowed to enter the zone for scientific, educational, or touristic purposes. They are guided by strict rules and regulations to ensure their safety and respect for the site. Chernobyl is also a source of inspiration and innovation for future generations. Some scientists and engineers have been exploring ways to use the zone as a laboratory for renewable energy projects, such as solar farms or biofuel plants. Thank you for watching this video of world's worst nuclear disaster. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. And don't forget to leave a comment below. What do you think about this disaster? Let us know your opinion. See you next time.